And our program guest this morning is the Foreign Minister, Bob Carr. That's coming up, but first we'll take a look at the Sunday papers around the country and the asylum seekers boat tragedy. Dennis Atkins reports this morning that those who survived might be fast-tracked.
Yes, the Sunday Territorian is reporting that the survivors from that tragedy off Christmas Island are likely to be transferred to the mainland pretty quickly and have their refugee claims treated as a priority. There's a spokesman for the department saying they would be treated as vulnerable clients, which is interesting. I suppose it's the least you can do. These people have not only are they in their minds fleeing from what they see as persecution or whatever in their homelands, they're also had this additional shock of a near-death experience at sea. So it's the department is going to treat them reasonably humanely and get them to the mainland as quickly as possible.
And the public mood certainly seems to be right across the board. Something has to be done. What that something is the issue. Phil, a story this morning that Malcolm Turnbull might urge Tony Abbott to compromise.
Yes, Barrie of the Sunday Telegraph is reporting, it's unsourced, that Turnbull will urge Abbott at Shadow Cabinet tomorrow. That we've got to knock heads with Labor and come up with a bipartisan solution, which would probably have to mean the Malaysian solution. It's quoting Liberal MPs saying Turnbull will raise this. If he will, he's not Robinson Crusoe inside the Liberal Party on this. We've had Mal Washer came out stridently on Friday saying enough's enough, give Labor the Malaysian solution.
Just on that, we'll have a listen to what Mal Washer did have to say. He said it quite publicly, Liberal backbench, and then we'll see what Tony Abbott said in response to that.
Let's get some humanity back, and let's get bipartisanship back, and let's get more sophisticated in the management of this and the simplicity of Visit Malaysia and Nauru. Mate, I throw up every time I hear this. The Australian public are now getting sick of this. If we need to accept both, if that's the compromise politically, and if we've got to keep it at the kindergarten level and not take it to the university, let's do both.
I am all in favour of talking to everyone who needs to be spoken to. But in the end, what's important here is effective policies, not necessarily bipartisan policies. Now, I believe that the coalition has effective policies. Certainly they were effective under the Howard government, and that's what matters. What matters here is putting the right policies in place, not talking endlessly about what they might be.
Gerard, he seems to be saying there that he's not interested in a compromise. The government has to accept the coalition policy.
Well, I think Tony Abbott's view is that the policies once worked and they can work again. But what I note about Malcolm Turnbull's comment, I mean, it's closer to Labor's position than to Tony Abbott's position again. But what's interesting here is, what about the Greens? Tony Abbott's the leader of the opposition. The Greens are in an agreement with the Labor Party. The Greens won't do anything on this, and people like Mr Turnbull are saying, well, what's the opposition going to do? The other question is, what are the Greens going to do? If the Greens support the government, they'll get the legislation through the Senate. They won't do it. But having said that, I mean, here you're dealing, I'm very sympathetic to refugees, but here you're dealing with people who have made a second movement. This boat apparently has come from Indonesia. As far as I'm aware, there are very few of any Indonesians on it. So they've come from somewhere else. They're probably flown to Malaysia or somewhere else, and then they've come across to Indonesia and they've caught a boat. Now, there are many people in camps in Africa and in other parts of Asia who have very good claims to be refugees as well. And if you start giving preference in treatment to asylum seekers, you are essentially going to encourage it. And as we know, many people die.
But on that issue, though, of whether something's got to give here. Now, what can work? What has to happen for a better solution to arise?
I mean, it's not just Malcolm Turnbull, if it is Malcolm Turnbull, but Philip Ruddock is also of the view that Abbott should give Labor Malaysia. Labor's offering Nauru. And Ruddock's of the view that you've got to use every weapon in your armoury. You can't just pick and choose from the menu of options. You do it all. And the Coalition and Labor support offshore processing. The Greens don't. The Greens are ostensibly happy with the situation now where boats come willy-nilly. That's onshore processing, and that's what the experts warned would happen. They'd come at a steady clip. You're not going to get the Greens on board on any form of offshore processing. So it really is, in practical terms, the two parties who support it have to come up with an idea.
Well, if the government made this legislation a matter of confidence in the government, the Greens would support it.
No, they wouldn't.
No, they won't. And
Well,
and
the
what's
Greens are
wrong
going to
anyway
bring
with
Greens are
sidelining
going to-
the Greens? I mean, the coalition is constantly saying the government's under the control of the Greens. Sideline the Greens and do a deal directly with the
Well,
government.
all I'm saying is if Malcolm Turnbull has made this statement, all I'm saying is that it overlooks the role of the Greens in this. The reason why the government couldn't get its legislation through is because the Greens stopped it, essentially.
But, Dennis, it doesn't look as if there is compromise in the air.
It doesn't. Tony Abbott and Julia Gillard haven't talked about this, as far as we know, since August last year, and that meeting was very short and very unproductive. I think if Malcolm Turnbull doesn't raise it, and we don't know because the story doesn't actually quote him, at Shadow Cabinet, I think it will definitely be raised in the party room on Tuesday morning. I think that people like Mal Washer, Russell Broadbent and Judy Moylan, who were a couple of the people who got John Howard to change his mind on processing of asylum seekers, I think they'll raise it for sure. And I think there will be pressure within the Labor Party to actually talk to the opposition and try and get something. And, the idea that we shouldn't have a bipartisan policy just flies in the face of reality and what's going on.
But
and
the Malaysian agreement, as I understand it, was for 800 people. There are many more than 800 people coming monthly. I mean, Malcolm Fraser's been banging on about this. In the whole of the 7 years of the Fraser government, only 2,000 people came by boat. 2,000. We're getting those figures almost every month now. Yeah, he got those figures over 7 years.
But the point is, we don't know whether the Malaysian solution will work or not because it's never been given a go.
No, but it was only for 800 people. We'd be over the quota already. What happens after that?
But those extra people are coming because the Malaysian solution was never put in place.
The fellow who designed it, Andrew Metcalfe, who's now on sabbatical from the Immigration Department, said he addressed that argument in that briefing he gave both the media last year and then Tony Abbott, and he said, of course, he said, if you send back 800, that should stop it. It's not a one-for-one type thing. It's not like 800 will get sent back, and once they're sent back, they'll start arriving again.
I think Andrew Metcalfe was a very good public servant. But it won't stop it because these people are pretty smart.
But this is the guy who designed the Pacific solution.
They can count. They can get to 800 and work out what's beyond 800. They're pretty smart people. So, I mean, unless the Malaysian solution doesn't resolve the current problem when people are coming here in their thousands almost every some months.
Well, he certainly said, and I know because I was sitting 2 feet from him, he said what Abbott is proposing will not work. He said the Pacific solution will no longer work because they now know that if you get to Nauru or Manus Island and you get accepted, then there's an 8 in 10 chance you're coming to Australia. He said TPVs are no longer a deterrent. And he said this turning the boats back, well, that was very effective. But as soon as they did it, they started scuttling the boats and or sinking them.
Well,
and so he said it worked once, but it won't work again, and you need to do something drastic.
Well, that's Mr. Metcalfe's opinions.
Well, he's the guy.
We don't know.
Well, this is the fellow who designed these policies or helped design these policies when Howard was in government. I mean, I just think. He's telling Tony Abbott, you can try it again, but it won't work.
Yeah, but the idea that a scheme will work if there's a maximum on it of 800, that's wishful thinking. It won't.
Right. We'll move on now to the final issue with the newspapers, Gerard, and that's there may be a breakthrough in the Melinda Taylor, the Australian lawyer who's being held in Libya.
Well, the News Limited papers are reporting this morning that the International Criminal Court has expressed regret for the way this matter was handled in relation to Gaddafi's son, Saif, and Melinda Taylor was part of that 4-person delegation that went there. As I understand it, Minister Bob Carr has been after this move, and it might be coming about, but these are very difficult circumstances. I think Bob Carr's handled it well, but it's very difficult because it's not exactly clear who's running all of Libya. It's not even exactly clear who's running parts of Libya. So this is probably a helpful outcome, but there's still probably a bit of time to go on.
Yeah, the ABC reported on this last night as well, and the inquiry, apparently the investigation is to see if anybody is guilty of misconduct. So we'll go on to that now. That's the Sunday papers, and we'll go straight to our program guest, the Minister for Foreign Affairs, Bob Carr, who joins us from our Sydney studios.